Tilehurst Podcast.
By Reading fans, for Reading fans.
Hi everyone, I hope you're well. Olly Allen here, assistant editor at the Tilehurst End and host of the Weekend Preview podcast. As I'm recording this, and perhaps as you're listening to this, it is the international break, meaning obviously no game for Reading, and as such no Weekend Preview or main show podcast. To fill the void, we thought we'd bring you a very special show with former Reading striker Adam Le Fondre. Alfie signed for the club from Rotherham in the summer of 2011 and played a key part in the club's promotion to the Premier League in his first season. He top scored in all three of his campaigns at the Masdad, netting a total of 41 goals in 110 appearances for the club. In his chat with us, we talk everything from that iconic night away to Southampton, his role as a super sub, his move away from Berkshire in 2014 is often talked about as having saved the club from administration, how he is enjoying life with Sydney FC in Australia, and much, much more. So without further ado, let's get into it.
Get social with the boys.
Find them on Twitter
at the Tilehurst End
and facebook.com/the Tilehurst End.
Adam Le Fondre, welcome to the Tilehurst End podcast. Thanks very much for joining me from your new home of Sydney, Australia.
Cheers, thanks for having me.
No worries at all. I think we'll start very briefly with your career before Reading. You came through the academy at your hometown club, Stockport, and made your debut at 17 in League One. You then spent the next 6 seasons of your career with Stockport, Rochdale, and then Rotherham in League One and League Two. Sort of, how much did your time in sort of the lower division shape the player that you've become? So was there ever any opportunity to play at a high level? I mean, you were in prolific form. I think you got 38 goals in 2 years with Rochdale before getting 30 in your first season with Rotherham.
Yeah, I think when I was younger, I always had the belief that I was capable of playing higher, and had all the right attributes to play higher and score goals higher. But obviously, whatever happened in the meantime, it just didn't quite work for me, or clubs just didn't quite take a chance on me, or whatever. And maybe that was just on them. And when you keep proving it year on year out, which you did, then obviously I went from Stockport to Rochdale, like you say, scored 38, 40 goals there in 2 seasons. And then built on it again with nearly 60 goals in 2 and a bit seasons at Rotherham. I think people couldn't help but, take notice. Everyone wants a goal scorer. And at that time, I was probably one of the major ones in the country in League Two level.
You gave an interview in the summer of 2011 after missing out on promotion to League One with Rotherham, sort of stating your desire to play at that high level. But it wasn't actually, of course, until late August that you made the switch to Reading that summer, having already begun the new campaign with Rotherham, scoring 4 goals in 1 game. I think was there much other interest that summer? I think the likes of West Ham and Leicester sort of mentioned in the press, but sort of how then did the deal with Reading come about?
It was quite sudden, actually. I think at Rotherham, after about 10 games in at Rotherham, I was on about 12 goals. So I was constantly linked from more or less my stay at Rotherham, and then started the third season with Andy Scott, new manager. And I said to him in the summer, I was like, look, if something comes in, obviously I want to test myself. Hopefully the club won't stand him away. Obviously he wasn't too pleased because he wanted to build his team around me, but he obviously understood my ambition and my thinking. I think I played Barnet at home, scored at home against them. We drew. I think we either drew 1-1 or 1. No, it might have been 2-2. I think we drew. And after that, it was, I don't know, I just got a call and he said, right, Reading want you. And I was just like, right, I'm in the car sort of thing. And then I was making my way down to the Madstad, and the rest is history, really.
What was the mood like in the sort of the Reading camp when you first arrived at the club? I think obviously the squad had lost the playoff final the year before and sort of started the new campaign not in the best form. I think it was 1 win in the league and sort of defeat in the League Cup too. So what was the sort of feeling around the camp when you first arrived?
Oh, I came in the middle of an international break, so it was quite like obviously relaxed and stuff. I was sort of feeling my way in. Probably, to be fair, probably the boys didn't really know me from who I was, do you know what I mean? Because obviously I'd come from lower league, and I was just eager to impress everyone. Wanted to stamp my authority on the team and on the division, and just trying to hit the ground running. So I was just bundling with energy and just wanting to play games and score goals, and I think that's what I've always been about, really.
You came off the bench to score your first goal for the club against Doncaster, and then scored a couple more in the next two games. I think the 2 goals against Derby at home sticks out for me personally. But I think I wanted to. And there were quite a few questions on Twitter about this as well. What was making that jump up sort of 2 divisions? Like, I mean, I suppose you had that as well, sort of moving down south for the first time in your career. But I think you see it quite a lot that sort of a player is scoring for sort of fun in the lower leagues and then gets snapped up by a championship club and doesn't always work. I mean, Reading this summer signed Mark McNulty, who got 28 goals for Coventry last season, hasn't quite found his feet in the Championship yet.
Yeah, I think obviously Brian was brilliant with me. You know, Brian and Gibbo and were awesome. You know, they threw me right in. They gave me all the confidence I needed. I had obviously, I'm not sure what confidence as a player anyway. And at that time in my career, I was sky high with everything. You know, like I felt I could take on the division and be a real force in that division. And, you know, Reading were the ones that give me the chance. And, you know, I would do anything to repay them for that. And, you know, I think my performances and my goals that I scored for them helped do that.
The team as a whole sort of muddled around mid-table for the first half of that season. And then, of course, then sort of around January time where the results really started to pick up. I think you scored a couple of late goals at Watford and at Millwall, if I remember correctly. I think, what sort of changed in the dressing room at that time? I think we had quite a few questions sort of asking just what made that team tick in the second half of 2011 to 12.
Well, I think it's well documented. You know, when Jason Roberts came in, it made a big difference to the dynamic of the team. You know, he was playing like Championship Drogba. You know, I don't think anyone could ever dispute that. Then for them 6 months, he was unplayable. Yeah. And it was a pleasure to play alongside him. You know, he's a great man, a gentleman as well off the pitch. You know, it's a shame the way his career ended with injury, but for them 6 months, he was unplayable. You know, we had Joby and Jimmy down the wings, who were putting in crosses left, right, and centre, working double as hard going back. You know, we just had such a good work ethic and spine to the squad. Yeah. That, you know, like when I was coming off the bench, obviously I understood my role in the team at the time, and like Churchy understood his role in the team. We might have been frustrated because obviously I'd come off and score a match winner, or Churchy come off and do well and maybe score that. But ultimately, we wouldn't start the next game because that wasn't making the team tick by us being in the team at that time. You know, no matter how frustrated that was, we all had to see the bigger picture, and I think that's what we all got together as a group and as a team, and that's why we achieved something special, because there wasn't anyone who was sat on the sidelines thinking it should be me, it could be me, and sulking for themselves. We were all in it together to get promoted and get the right results.
You mentioned Jason Roberts. I think a lot of fans are sort of pointed towards his signing as well. We had a question about sort of who your favourite strike partner was whilst at Reading. I presume Roberts would be up there. I mean, you also had Noel Hunt, Simon Church, as you mentioned, Matthew Mansett for a very short period of time, and of course Pavel Pogrebniak as well. I mean, I'm not sure anyone's ever going to forget anytime soon. But I suppose they were all sort of very different sort of strikers. But what were they all like to play alongside?
Yeah, you know, Hunty was a good striker to play, because he'd won a lot of headers, so I knew I didn't need to get really involved in that. It worked his taters off, you know. He flipped everything on for me, so I could just gamble, which was always my natural game, to just play on the shoulder and just get in behind and just obviously finish things off and let obviously the other striker do the dirty work for me. Robbo was not too dissimilar. He was a bit more of a hold-up player rather than a flick on. Me and Churchy had a great relationship off the pitch as well. We were more, when we played together, more to feet players, where we wanted to link up together and play like the intricate 1-2s and that sort of thing. And, you know, to be fair, even with Pathfinder, the third season where we just missed out on the playoffs, I thought me and him had a great understanding that season. We, I think it was from January onwards when we actually played as a two up front consistently. We did a lot of damage together, and it's sort of like what could have been fair, I think, for me and Pav if we played for a more sustained period up front together. And you know, I think we would have caused the championship a lot more headaches than we did in just then, say, last 3 or 4 months of the season where we just missed out.
What was he like off the pitch, the Pog? I mean, he's got sort of a cult status at Reading, sort of, you know, this big Russian striker sort of coming into the team. What was he like sort of off the pitch?
He was actually brilliant. He was a top guy. You know, he was just down to earth, just got involved with everyone. Nice guy, you know. He wore questionable clobber, but he was a nice guy.
Going back to that incredible run, and we get to April, Reading sitting second in the Championship table, sort of having dislodged West Ham, who we beat 4-2 at Upton Park. Again, you unfortunately missed out on. And we then played Leeds at home, and you came on for the final 20 minutes or so, and scored those 2 goals to win the game. The following week was that Southampton game, that iconic game at St Mary's, where you again sort of started on the bench. I mean, you touched on it briefly earlier, but did you feel that you should have started that game, obviously having scored those 2 goals against Leeds the previous week?
I just wanted to play, you know. Yeah. Obviously coming up from League Two to the Championship and making an impact like I was doing. It was difficult to sit there in silence and just say, I can afford to be on the bench, but ultimately, like I said, I knew my role within the squad at that time and that moment where it wasn't a time for me to kick up the fuss and, you know, start throwing the toys out of the pram and saying I should be doing this, I should be doing that. Yeah, maybe I should have been starting, but ultimately it doesn't matter. We got the end result. I came off the bench, scored 2, so it doesn't really bother to me.
And I suppose it did only sort of spur you on when you did come on, and you mentioned got those 2 goals that sent the away, and it's absolutely crazy. Yeah. I think it's a moment that no Reading fan will sort of ever forget. So I can only thank you for that. But I mean, I suppose it's a bit of a it's a bit of a silly question, but sort of what was the atmosphere like in the dressing room after that game? Was it almost like, you know, we've got this now? Yeah,
it was unbelievable. You know, I think that was a real statement that as well. You know, obviously when we went to Upton Park, obviously I didn't play. That was the only game I missed, I think. Yeah. For injury. When we went there, you know, and we beat them 4-2 in the back garden, and then went to St Mary's and won 3-1. I think everyone sort of didn't fancy us. They thought we're having a good run, but you know, I mean, we sustained it and we beat off the competition. We were deserved winners in the end. You know what I mean? If you go to 2nd and 3rd place and beat them in their own garden, then you know what I mean. Who's to say we don't deserve to get promoted and win the Championship?
Promotion then came the very next game at home to Nottingham Forest. We didn't actually go into that one sort of knowing that a win would do. Ledge scored the goal, but I think it was West Ham drawing with Bristol City that sort of confirmed that promotion. And I think the fans in the stands sort of knew this was the case. I mean, there's a famous video of JB McAnuff sort of running over to the stands screaming, "Are we up? Are we up?" And I mean, at what point sort of did you on the pitch sort of realise that it was sort of confirmed?
Just when everyone's running on the pitch, really. You know, like when people are coming over and mobbing you, you know, obviously something's confirmed, all right.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose it's very difficult sort of to describe sort of that emotion, but I mean, that must rank sort of up there as one of your greatest achievements in the game, surely.
Yeah, definitely. I think it probably is as a collective, as a group, definitely probably my most important achievement as a player. You know, I think that made me really, you know, give me even more belief going into next season that I was justified in what I was saying to the press beforehand and what I could say to the press after that. You know, to come in from League Two, score, I think it was 12 goals that season, to finish leading scorer with only starting, I don't know, probably about 15 games. I think I more than justified what I was saying to say that I was good enough to play at the Championship, and that's why I've always had that confidence about myself to score goals. You know, it's always a strange thing. It's like a strange fine line, isn't it, between arrogance and confidence. And I think I've always walked that line very well. And whenever it's always overstepped that mark, I've always backed it up to prove that it was confidence and not arrogance. And I think that's what I did.
I mean, we then, of course, move on to that season in the Premier League, and obviously, what was sort of the feeling in the squad going into that campaign? I think obviously having just one promotion, you always want to try and do as well as possible. Was there a feeling that sort of you could survive in the Premier League going into that one?
Yeah, obviously we needed to build on what we had achieved because, you know what I mean, you're going into the big bag Premier League, so you need to strengthen areas. I think we all thought we were good enough to do that because obviously we just won the Championship, so obviously you're the best team in the Championship, so who's to say you're not going to do well in the Premier League, do you know what I mean? Personally, I found the Premier League easier than the Championship when we made the step up, but obviously as a team game we we obviously struggled early doors to find a winning formula.
Well, I was going to ask about that jump. Obviously, we spoke about the sort of step up from League Two to the Championship earlier, but sort of you then made the step up just a year later. Sort of what is the best league in the world? I mean, you mentioned you found it easier. What sort of was? I mean, obviously the Championships perhaps portrayed as sort of a more physical league. Was it the fact that you sort of moved into the Premier League sort of changed that?
Yeah, definitely. The Championships are, I think personally, much harder. Well, from my 2 seasons, from that season going up to staying and being in the Premier League, definitely I found the Championship harder. Physically, defenders just wanted to smash me. Premiership, they showed me maybe a little bit more respect, where they were actually trying to win the ball a bit more, and they wanted to play, and it was a little bit less hurly-burly, which I say would suit me a bit better.
I mean, the recruitment that summer, sort of from the side, I think you have Gareth McCleary, Chris Gunter, Danny Guthrie, and obviously Pogrebniak coming in. I think sort of from my perspective, I think some other fans as well potentially sort of perhaps we should have always maybe invested a little bit more or a little bit more wisely. I mean, was there ever any feeling within the side that perhaps you should have maybe brought some more sort of Premier League experienced players into that team?
I think because we had such a good group going from the Championship to the Premier League, it's hard to find the right characters to fit our dressing room. I think you find it with most teams where you struggle to integrate them. If you look at Bournemouth, they've not really changed that much from their Championship team to the Premiership team. Obviously, they've added players here and there, but big money signings they've signed have often fell by the wayside because they can't adapt to Eddie Howe's training regime and how he likes things. So I think the way we marshalled the not me per se, but obviously the way the team marshalled the changing room, I think the right characters have to come in for it to work. Do you know what I mean? And I'm not the recruitment driver or anything like that, but I'm sure they were looking at more players, but maybe didn't have the funds to buy them.
I mean, it was a difficult start to that campaign. Obviously, it was probably sort of the first sort of time that maybe Brian McDermott sort of found himself in sort of a bit of a tricky run of form.
I think Brian always stayed very level-headed, which was good for the boys because we always sort of knew what was coming. You can't really dwell on too many things, and you have to just move on. And I think if you go too much into a negative, you take away the confidence of the group. And I think that's why we always just moved on to the next game, tried to be as positive as possible to obviously plough into the next game to get a result, because obviously if you start dwelling on things, like I say, you lose confidence and then you start doubting things, and that's when you may lose parts of the team which help get you there, do you know what I mean, as characters and as leaders.
Am I right in saying that you're a Man United fan?
I am, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what was it like to score against them? Obviously you scored against them at the Mazda, and obviously then you played at Old Trafford later on in the season. What was that like?
Yeah, it was incredible. I think that was one of my best moments as well in football. All my family were there watching me. It was on, I think it was the day after my birthday or a day before my birthday, and score at home against them is, you know what I mean, it's sort of what dreams are made of.
January was sort of that one highlight of that season. I think Brian McDermott won Manager of the Month. You won the Player of the Month award after coming off the bench. To score the equaliser in a 3-2 win over West Brom, scored twice to beat Newcastle 2-1, and obviously got those 2 goals in a 2-2 draw against Chelsea as well. Was that when you felt your best at Reading, perhaps? I mean, was there a feeling sort of within the squad you could kick on from those games and sort of move away from the bottom 3?
Yeah, it's funny actually. We did really well. We battled. We were great in periods of them games, but then, when we come out, I think we had an international break just after that, and we come back after that, and I think we lost at Stoke away, which was a real dampener, and I think it deflated our confidence and took away a lot of things out of us. I think if we didn't have the international break, we might have sustained and run a little bit longer and kicked on, and that's what we needed really, but we didn't manage to do that, and it just started to pile on, and then we just started to lose crucial games, which is what you can't do when you're in a dogfight.
Well, I think certainly from some fans' perspective, I think you could see that those games showed that the team did have sort of that fight and that desire within them. What you sort of touched upon it there, but sort of why couldn't we see sort of those qualities in those games throughout the rest of the season, sort of when it really mattered towards the end?
I don't know. It's quite hard to put your finger on it. Maybe we just wasn't good enough. As a squad.
Yeah.
Maybe I don't think anyone could ever question our team's mentality and, you know, and our team's will and desire to win a game. But maybe on some occasions, we're in games where we just weren't good enough, and, you know, the quality of the opposition was greater than us, and we couldn't impact ourselves enough on them. So, you know, sometimes when it happens like that, you just have to hold your hand up and go, right, we go again. And, you know, if like mistakes cost us games, you in the Premiership, you know, you're marginalised. In the Championship, you get away with things, but in the Premiership, you give any of the champions in the Premiership half a chance to lose them 1-0.
You've got quite a reputation for sort of being the super sub. We obviously talked about those games against Leeds and Southampton in 11-12, and then the games against Newcastle, Chelsea, West Brom in January 2013. Was there ever sort of anything that Brian McDermott said to you as he put you on?
Not particularly, no. It was sort of trying to keep me out of his office, I think, because obviously I won't be starting games.
Yeah.
You know, obviously the Everton game, when I scored 2 from the start, I think I was like saying to him, look, this is what happened, sort of thing. And, you know, we scored again not long after that as well, but it was just one of them things really where I was happy I was scoring goals, you know what I mean? If we're getting results, then that's all that matters. All I want to do is stay in the Premier League and carry on playing in the best league in the world.
Unfortunately, of course, we couldn't quite turn it round, and Brian McDermott was sacked in March of that season. What was the feeling in the dressing room when he was sacked? I think everyone was obviously a little bit disappointed because obviously what Brian had achieved at Reading, you know, he brought probably all of the boys in who were in the squad, or he'd worked with them in some capacity for a long time, and, you know, it was just probably quite a shock, really. You know, they probably thought they'd stick with them to, you know, obviously to stay up, and even if they didn't stay up, he'd have a chance at coming back up with the squad in the Championship, because obviously he took us up the season before that, but obviously it weren't to be, and which was a shame for Brian and you know, and obviously for the club as well. Nigel Adkins was the man that came in. I think we got beaten by Arsenal in his first game in charge, but what was his message coming into that team? Was it, you know, that they're still sort of fighting the side to try and stay up?
Yeah, but he wanted us to play a little bit more and be a little bit more, say, controlled in possession.
Yeah.
Which was a big shock to really, well, not a big shock, but a bit of a contrast to the way we'd set him up in like that. Also, the 18 months I'd been there. With obviously Brian, we wasn't a totally dominant possession team. We were more, obviously, get the ball wide, let's get the ball in the box, and, you know what I mean, let's cause some thunder in the box and just rash the life out of them. Whereas Nigel obviously wanted a little bit of that, but a bit more control and a bit more measure on the play outside and build-up play. How
do you look back on that Premier League season in general? I mean, obviously as a team, it was obviously quite a disappointing one, but I mean, for you, it's the highest level you've played at in your career. I think you scored 12 goals, won the January Player of the Month award. I think you still have something like the 6th best minutes per goal ratio in Premier League history. So
yeah, of course, you know, it was amazing for me, but ultimately it was crap for me as well because I got relegated. You know, obviously I'd rather have stayed up and got one in afterwards because I'd probably still be in the Premiership more. But it's one of them things, really. As a footballer, it just happens. You know, you get relegated, you get promoted. It happens.
Yeah.
I had a good season personally, but overall it was a poor season because we got relegated.
I mean, it's still quite nice whenever sort of Sky Sports bring up those graphics about the best minutes per goal ratio. It's quite nice to see Adam Le Fondre still sort of in that graphic. But we started life back in the Championship fairly well. I think losing just once in the first 10 games of the new season. Was the ambition sort of to get straight back up, or was it clear that sort of, you know, with the nature of the arrivals, you know, I think we had Danny Williams, Wayne Bridge, who was sort of close to retirement, and the notorious Royston Drenthe. What was it? A sort of more of a patient rebuilding job, perhaps?
I don't think we felt that in the squad. I think we felt we should be going, you know, at least playoffs, and that was sort of our squad strength level, and now I think we should have been pushing. I think even the gaffer would probably admit that as well with the squad we had.
I mentioned Royston Drenthe there. We spoke to Jen Cowchan about this as well, but what was Royston like to play with, play with on the pitch, and do you ever have much to do with him off the pitch?
Yeah, Royce, I got on quite well with Royston, to be fair. I don't think you could ever doubt his quality. I think early on, maybe his fitness could have been doubted. And probably, to be fair, probably his time there, his fitness could have been doubted. We struggled to get the best out of him, I think, as a squad. And, you see coincidences in games where we drift past two, whip a delightful ball in, but then it'd be too tired to run back after that, and it felt like some games we were carrying him. And, in the Championship, definitely, you cannot carry anyone. And I think that's where some problems arose between the squad and just fitting him in, really.
Did it sort of become clear with that sort of arrival that perhaps it wasn't, that might not have been Nigel Adkins' signing and more the owners? Was that sort of a sign at all to the person on the pitch?
Yeah, as a player, you're not really too fussed about that, I think. Players are not really too bothered about that. If he's good enough to play, then we're all happy. Do you know what I mean? If he's going to help us, then we don't care what sort of signing he is. He could play pub league, but if he comes in and helps us win, no one cares. If he comes from Real Madrid, helps us win, no one cares. Do you know what I mean? We were that sort of bunch of players where we obviously you have to accept everyone because you're coming into a culture. You have to make them feel welcome and bring them into the group as well. And I think that's what we did as a group. We all, we brought them all in. Got obviously Pavin, Danny Williams was brilliant. He was an integral part of the squad. Royston, we brought them all in within the group, and obviously helped them as best as we could.
I mentioned Nigel Adkins briefly a second ago. What was he like to work on? I mean, he comes across in the media sort of this incredibly sort of positive and perhaps a bit cheesy. Was that sort of a reflection of him behind the scenes, or was he a bit of a different character?
Yeah, he's very positive. I won't say a bad word about him. Obviously, I would have liked to have played more, especially in the Championship season. I didn't think he liked me playing away from home. Because he liked to probably set up a little bit more defensively. But obviously when I spoke to him, I just said, look, I need to play. You know what I mean? When I play, I score goals. And I think when he started playing me, when it come to January time, when he started playing me again, and obviously I started scoring goals again. Yeah. And, I said that to him and we had a quite frank conversation about that because obviously he bought Billy in. And I was like, well, you bought Billy and he's the same player as me. Yeah. And I said, well, what's going on here sort of thing? Said you either want me or you don't. And in the end, obviously Billy went back, and then I obviously was in the team and started playing well and scoring goals. I think always as a player I needed a run of games, and ultimately Nigel ended up giving me that.
You spoke about that January there. I mean, you scored the 2 hat-tricks in 3 games and the 7-1 win over Bolton and the 5-1 win over Blackpool. But the team just sort of weren't quite consistent enough to mount a proper promotion challenge. Obviously, it culminated in that 2-2 draw with Burnley on the final day. And again, it was a late Brighton goal that pushed us out of the playoffs in the last minute. And again, that's not one sort of where on the pitch you're probably not too sure what is happening. I think especially with some fans invading the pitch that day. So
yeah, my dad tried jumping on the pitch that day as well, and he broke his hip. It was I had to tell him that we didn't do it, but it was one of them really. Yeah, it was heartbreaking really that because in the lead up to that I was struggling with something to do with my knee, which referred into my hamstring, and obviously I was doing everything to make sure I could play in that game, and in the end I think I came off after about 60 minutes because it flared up and literally I couldn't walk, and we were gutted. Obviously I think it was Ajoa who scored for Brighton in the last minute at Forest. I remember it. I remember being sat inside in the changing room, gutted as he scored, and that's football for you. I think in periods in that season, especially the second half of the season, we were in a great position. I don't think we dropped outside the playoffs to the last, probably about 5 or 6 games, and then we clawed our way back in at Donny. I think Middlesbrough home and then Doncaster away, and then to just drop out on the last day was heartbreaking, really.
I think those Alex Pearce stepovers from the game against Doncaster that sticks in my mind. When you saw Alex Pearce striding forward with those stepovers, what was going through your head?
Don't trip over your shorts because they're up near his nipples and the lace is hanging out. No one likes to see Pearcey running at goal. He's a funny guy.
he always came across as sort of one of the big characters in that dressing room. I suppose when he was vice captain, was he sort of one of those sort of characters that would get the team going?
Yeah, definitely. I think as a group we all understood, the Reading ethos.
Yeah.
And I think we had obviously Morrow came into the team, Gunts, obviously Jem was a big part of the team.
Yeah.
Joby was a massive part of everything. You know what I mean? We had a real good bunch of players who knew the Reading, way of things, and we just went with that really, and we grew with that as a group.
I was looking through that team yesterday and sort of looking at the sort of the characters in the team and sort of the relationship that they have with the fans and comparing it to sort of the current Reading team and sort of seeing how we are lacking those characters. Now, how important is it that sort of that relationship exists with the fans?
Yeah, definitely. I think as a footballer, it's your duty to sort of interact with the fans because it's sort of gone away from that, and as football becomes a bit more polarised with obviously the TV and the money and all the things that come with it. I think fans are probably feeling a little bit shortchanged because they're paying all this money and they don't even get to speak to them. Like, do you know what I mean? And if they ever tweet them or anything like that, they're getting someone who runs their PR to tweet them back or something like that. It's not really a personal game anymore, really, unless you can catch a nice football on the off chance. And then, as a person, do you want to be intruding on their life?
Yeah.
It's quite a hard balance, I think, for a fan now, especially, with Premiership players, because they can get caught doing anything, you know what I mean? Look at Raheem Sterling. Poor lad gets battered for doing anything. You know what I mean? He picks up a piece of rubbish off the floor. He's in the Daily Mail for doing it. You know what I mean? And so you can get scrutinised for anything. And, I think football's gone that way. And I think I've always tried to be open with people on Twitter and on social media platforms because I know how important it is to interact with fans and get fans behind you. As a player, you want their support and from them. And I think Reading, I did that. Well, to be fair, wherever I've been, I've more or less always done that.
Sure.
And I've been given the opportunity for interaction because I want to be the hero. Yeah. I've always said that as a kid, as a player. I've wanted to be the hero. I've wanted to the one the fans sing my name because that's what feeds my ego, which helps my confidence. And it may be silly as a 31-year-old saying that, but that's what gets me going at football. I won't be the one people depend on, and I won't be the one that delivers, and that's what gives me the edge to do that.
Yeah, it's very clear from my point of view that you are sort of one of those rare figures in the game that do interact with sort of fans on Twitter, and especially at Bolton. You had quite a good relationship with a few of the fans. Then your departure then from Reading that summer, 2014, to Cardiff is quite often talked about sort of having sort of saved the club from going under, really. I mean, up until that point, how much sort of did you and all of the, sort of the other guys in the dressing room sort of know about the financial situation, sort of what was going on behind the scenes?
Not too much, if I'm honest. Obviously, it was in the off season, but I just got my agent told me it was between me and McCarthy who was going, and I think someone pulled out the McCarthy deal, so it was like, right, you're going then. Yeah. So I was like, right, all right then, sort of thing. I went and spoke to Cardiff.
Was it simply a case of sort of Reading sort of saying we need the money and we've accepted an offer? Was that sort of it?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, pretty much like we've accepted an offer because at the time I was meant to be getting a new deal. I was meant to be getting a new contract in the February of the Premiership season, which obviously dragged out for a season and a half.
Yeah.
To the end of the third season in the Championship. So I was like, okay. Then they just went, "Wow, yeah, we're selling you now." So
you didn't have a choice at all in the matter at all.
Well, obviously I could have turned it down, but then they were saying, "Look, we need you to go," sort of thing. So ultimately, if I'm not, I wasn't needed, and even like with the way the season went with Nigel Adkins, he was very indifferent towards me in the start of the season, towards the end of the season. I just felt like, you know what, maybe I'm better off I'm leaving because obviously I'm helping Reading in a way, and maybe I'm going to play more somewhere else.
Do you know what the reaction was like within the rest? Did you speak to any of the other guys at the time, sort of, saying how they sort of felt around the deal?
I spoke to a couple of boys, but at the end of the day, what there's nothing really they can do. Obviously they're going to be unhappy that I've gone, but that's just football, isn't it? If you don't cut the cloth accordingly, then there's going to be cut back somewhere. And if they can bring money in, I think you're seeing it a bit further along in the season. I think that was a season when they brought loads of loans in, weren't it?
Yeah.
Towards the end of the season, so there was obviously players that were on too big of money to sustain. So, and obviously Anton was wherever Anton was, but obviously the money weren't there.
Did you ever meet Anton Zingarevich?
Yeah, he played tennis with Feds a few times, and I was laughing when he was smashing him past Feds a couple of times because he used to batter Feds. But yeah, he always seemed a sound guy, and he was always really welcoming and chatting to me, and
yeah,
I never really had a bad exchange with him or anything like that. He always come across like a very well spoken person, so he was always kind and courteous as well.
Do you get the feeling at the time that he did sort of really care for the club?
Yeah, definitely. Obviously he wanted to build the club and obviously get greater success, but obviously it ultimately didn't work out for him. And obviously it felt the repercussions of that. The season after, obviously the parachute started to dry up a little bit.
And obviously it was Cardiff you ended up going to. Was that the only club that came in? Did you know at all, or was it sort of Cardiff's the first club to go in, so you are going there?
Cardiff was probably the only one that came with real strong interest.
Okay.
They came in for me that January in the Premiership season when they were in the Prem, and obviously we were in the Champ Offs. Obviously after I scored them 2 hat-tricks, they came in on deadline day for me then.
Okay.
And then they come back again obviously in the summer, and everything seemed to be right there. Solskjaer as the manager for me was one of the major things for me to do that, to play for one of my heroes. Yeah. Growing up as a kid, I was amazed by it, and they put in a fantastic offer towards me, and I just felt like this is what it had to be. I felt obviously Reading were going to struggle with obviously the financial constraints they were going to be under.
Yeah.
Cardiff were really going for it to get back promoted, and I wanted to get back to the Premier League.
Yeah. It never quite worked out for you at Cardiff, unfortunately. You went out on loan to Bolton, Wolves and Wigan, where it wasn't that easy either. I mean, it wasn't actually until you returned to Bolton on loan and then signed permanently that you sort of really settled again and sort of got back into your goal-scoring form. And I know on Instagram, when you left Bolton, you sort of described it as a special time in your career. What perhaps was it about Bolton that maybe hadn't been there since you left Reading?
I just played consistently.
Yeah.
Neil Lennon was probably... I played consistently at Cardiff, don't get me wrong, but I was playing in tactics that just didn't suit me at all. So I was never going to score pretty much. I was never in the box. I was always chasing the ball down the side to win throw-ins and corners. Whereas at Bolton, Neil Lennon literally just said, do what you do. He just let me do whatever I wanted to do. And as a player, from the manager saying that to you, and he singled me out before the game, he'd be like, best striker in the Champ, you're going to do this, you're going to do that, you're going to tear him apart and all this. And, from a manager coming to me saying that, I was just like, going out on the pitch feeling 10 feet tall. And, that gave me a real sort of like connection. The fans were great with me as well. They loved me straight away, which helped me massively, settle straight back in. And there's a great bunch of players there as well who were settled in really well. I think for me going Bolton, I was revitalising my career, especially in the Championship. I struggled at Cardiff at the start of that season, and then went to Bolton, scored, I think it was about 8 or 9 goals in about 16 games, and then I thought, right, yeah, I'm back now. I've shown people that if you play me, this is what happens, and then I made a bad decision to go Wolves on loan, and realised I just tried to get out of that in January, couldn't get out of it. And that season really took away all the good work I'd done at Bolton on loan, and it was a shame really, but I couldn't afford to mess that up, and it just happened. And I managed to get back to Bolton and get promoted to back to the Championship, and achieve something special there as well.
You came back to Hall at Reading last season with the goal at the Medeski Stadium. What was that like?
Yeah, it was brilliant. You know, I went back with Wolves and he didn't put me on at all. I couldn't believe it, to be fair. So that was the first time I managed to go out. And then I missed the game with Wigan because I was obviously in League One. And then, you know, to go and play there and start, it was awesome for me, you know. And to be fair, Reading were lucky that night. And I've had my boots on the wrong feet, so I should have scored about 4. They were lucky that I let them off with just 1. I
mean, as I alluded to, obviously you left Bolton in the summer to join your now club Sydney FC in Australia. You know, I think which was sort of a bit of a left field move in many ways. How did that one come about, and sort of how are you enjoying life down under so far?
I'm loving it, to be fair. You know, it was something I've been interested in. During the summer, I had a couple Australian clubs say they were interested in me. Would I be interested in the move? And I've talked to my wife, and you know, I said, should we do it, sort of thing. And we were both keen for something to happen. If it did happen, then it sort of simmered a little bit, and then came back really strong. More or less about 4 or 5 days before I actually went, and then I just went into obviously the manager and said, look, I've got an offer here on the table. Is it possible to let me go? And he said, yeah, you know. And then that was it, really. I was on a flight the day after, I think the Wednesday. Yeah. And then it was done, you know, like it was just one of them. It was, as a player, I just felt like I couldn't waste any more time in my career. You know, I just didn't want to sit on the bench anymore. At 31 years old, I didn't feel I needed to sit on the bench anywhere. I thought to myself, I'd proven everything I've needed to prove in the Championship, definitely. That I score goals when I play. And I've done that more or less every time I've played, you know. So I just felt like this is time for a fresh start, something different. I've always had ambitions of playing abroad. Obviously, I picked probably the furthest away country I could have picked, but you know, it's awesome out here and buzzing and loving it. And you know, played every game and scored a goal in every game. So I've just got to keep that up now.
Fantastic. How does the football sort of in the league sort of compare to Championship football?
Well, to be fair, the league's not started yet until don't start until the 19th of October. But I've played a couple cup games at the moment. Yeah. The standard's actually a lot better than I thought it would be. The tempo's obviously not as high as the Championship because the Championship's a relentless league. Tempo, physicality, but the physicality is quite good here. Obviously, like I said, the tempo's dropped a little bit. Teams want to play football a little bit more. There's a lot more possession-based teams, especially us. Sydney, we're a real good possession-based team, and you know, we look at obviously the difference between the Championship and coming out here is that in the Championship it's very very rare there's teams that are possession-based. You probably get maybe 5 or 6, and the rest are, you know, much of a much really in their style of play. And so yeah, it's obviously the standard in the Championships, the level's brilliant. You know, it's becoming probably a second Premier League really, because the Prem's obviously pulling away a little bit with the money they've got there, but obviously the money that's coming into the Championship now, which feeds down, is obviously helping that become sort of another Premiership as well, which maybe is going to be better for the game, but you just don't know.
We had a lot of questions on social media from fans asking if you'll ever come back to Reading, which I suppose is quite a tricky question to answer because you don't know what the rest of your career holds. But sort of how much do you still follow the club? Are you still in touch with any of the guys you played with?
Yeah, you know, obviously GMAC, I speak to GMAC now and then and just see what he's doing. Obviously, I know he had a couple of bad injuries as well, so obviously I might get well wishes and stuff like that to him. You know, obviously I've seen how Reading have done, seen how they started the season. Obviously when Gibbo went back in, obviously wished him well. And, you know, obviously I want Reading to succeed. You know, I want all the former clubs to succeed because, you know, especially Reading and Bolton, because I had such a great time there, and Rotherham as well, because I had such a brilliant time at them clubs, and them fans really responded to me as a player as well, and you know, touched me in my heart, you know, to sort of embrace me and and bring me in as a player and to be part of one of them. And, obviously all I wish for is success for them, and it looks as if it's going to be two hard seasons for both Bolton and Reading, but hopefully they can get a run together and push on.
It's been quite nice reminiscing about happier times with the club sort of in the position it's in at the moment. But I think you could tell by the reaction, when we announced we'd be speaking to you on Twitter, you could tell by the reaction by the fans that you're very much held in very, very high regard by Reading fans. I think you'd be welcomed back with open arms, whether as a player or perhaps even as a coach in the future.
Yeah, you never know. You never know with football. Like anything, you can never shut any doors because, like I say, football changes in the depth of the hat. Obviously, it's just like anything, isn't it? Really, I don't think you can ever do anything. Would I love to come back Reading? Yeah, of course. It's an amazing club. Who wouldn't? But my life's out here now, and I'm loving it out here. So
it's been an absolute pleasure, Adam Le Fondre.
Cheers. Thanks very much for that. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
The Tilehurst End Podcast.
By Reading fans, for Reading fans.